Yes.
today. I guess maybe.
I can test it.
I just looked at the red circle at the top.
Sawmill.
Ready? Good?
Sure.
Good morning.
Morning.
It is April 9th, 2026. Happy Masters Thursday to anybody who celebrates. My name is Mike Kelly. I am the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners for Johnson County, Kansas. We are here for a business meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. At this time, I'd like the clerk to please call the roll of commissioners.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner Brewer.
Brewer here.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Allen Brand.
Allen Brand, aye.
Chairman Kelly.
Aye, all are present. Therefore, we have a duly constituted meeting. I'd like to invite all those who are able to please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, if you would do me a favor, if you're here in person, and join me in checking cell phones or any other noise-making device that you may have brought with you and ensuring that they are turned to silent or turned off. We greatly appreciate your cooperation. We're going to start today with a public comment portion of the agenda. It's an opportunity for folks who wish to address the body assembled on county-related matters that do not appear on today's agenda to do so. If you do wish to speak on an action item, we ask that you register with that action item specifically. And if you happen to speak on an action item during this general public comment session, we're going to ask that you refrain at this time. When you do come to the podium, we ask you to state your name and the community in which you reside. We limit these comments to 2 minutes. There's a clock on either side of the dais that'll assist you with that time period. If you happen to go beyond that time period, we'll provide you an opportunity to conclude your comments. We do ask that the comments refrain from remarks that are personally offensive, impertinent, profane, or slanderous, or comments that would insult or demean any person or groups of persons. If we happen to stray in that kind of public comment, we will provide a warning. If it continues, we're going to ask that you step aside from the dais. We do accept public comments virtually. I believe we have one virtual public commenter that has registered this morning, so we're going to call on her first if the clerk is ready. All right, at this time, we'll invite Cassie Woolworth to speak.
Can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Oh, excellent. Okay, hi. Cassie Woolworth, Olathe, Kansas. Been here before. Hi, and first of all, let me say thank you, Johnson County Commissioners. It's been lovely having you in a position where we can make Johnson County a better community. Johnson County is no longer just a suburb. It's a diverse, economically powerful. It is aging, but it's semi-urban. So, couple of things. I love that we're allowing more housing. Please do that. I do hope that our pilot in transportation goes well, because I would like to see Johnson County get more walkable and have some additional transit opportunities. Cars are a problem. And I like the fact that y'all are intentionally managing aging. I really appreciate your focus on aging and the community. Johnson County can also help us out and maybe submit a strong recommendation to the Election Commission and ask them for ballot language access. We'd like to have our ballots in maybe more than one language, as Johnson County is becoming more diverse. White Johnson Countyans are decreasing, and our immigrant and other nationality friends are increasing in Johnson County. I really appreciate that. You guys have done a fantastic job. I have appreciated living in Johnson County. It gives me a quality life I absolutely love, and I like the focus that we're doing. As always, we hate the taxes. My only last and final thing, as always, is would you please turn those letters around in the park, please? It's weird when it's backwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is the only virtual public comment that is registered today, so we'll move on at this time to those who have registered in person, starting with Brian Perkins.
Good morning. Brian Perkins here, residing in Olathe, Kansas, and I am homeless.
I don't usually read these agendas, but one thing that I saw that kind of just made me think is about our budget. And I understand there's things that need to be aside for reasons, natural disasters, to show that we can, like a loan form, if that you want to make, if that makes sense, and show that there's money in the bank. Sum it up for you guys there. But the one thing that got me is $45.5 million. So we can have the will and the headspace to think about that. But 10% of that can do a lot for housing and homelessness right now. I think 10% would bring in a lot of eyes and attraction and minds to private developers and build those partnerships. I think that would be a great start, a hand-in-hand effort, and it could do a lot. And that's $4.5 million out of a $1 billion budget. It even feels weird to say $1 billion because that is an insanely large number. I've said this and I'll continue to say it. I just really, really hope and pray that we're intentional with this ad hoc work group. I'm thankful for it. I really am. I think it's a phenomenal first start. But I don't want us to forget the housing, transitional life. It is shelter, it's transitional housing programs, and it's affordable housing units. I love that there's homes being built that are affordable. That is great. That is awesome. But we cannot forget about those that are outside right now. It starts shelter, transitional housing programs, affordable housing units. It's a system. It works beautifully. It's proven. You guys know that. It's in the Built for Zero initiative. There's models out there. Cities have done it. We just got to keep going. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ben Hubbard.
Ben Hobart, Westwood Hills. Chairman Kelly and Commissioners, I attended your budget retreat. Taxpayers should be aware of the mindset of a majority of this board. It is apparent that the only way taxpayers are assured that Johnson County will actually tighten its belt and reduce wasteful spending is by limiting the revenue available for waste. But for the court's recent declaration that the Public Safety Sales Tax 3 kitchen sink resolution was null and void, there would be minimal, if any, true cost control measures. Just one case in point. The county has been having its windows washed 3 times a year. I don't know of any Johnson County taxpayer who spends their money in that way. So savings of $90,000 per year, which would not have been considered but for the limitation of revenue. Even with cost increases in the past, it is likely that this has cost the taxpayers $1 million with lost investment interest on the wasted funds over the past 10 years if that practice was followed. Your PowerPoint sets forth the strategic communications narrative of continuous improvement, and our chairman continually speaks of providing services that Johnson Countyans deserve. Sounds like a McDonald's commercial. You deserve a break today. Taxpayers only get what we pay for. We don't deserve any particular level of service. Unfortunately, however, we are not getting what we pay for. Competent fiscal discipline. There is continuous waste and funding of agendas that are not for the primary benefit of taxpayers, yet the cost of which are placed on taxpayers' backs. Taxpayers should be aware that this board has no compunction about placing an ever-increasing tax burden on residents and wasting funds in the process. How many more excesses, like washing windows 3 times a year, are buried in your proposed budget? Thank you for receiving my comments.
All right, thanks. That's all the registered speakers we have for today. Therefore, we will move to the business session as there are no notes for the record today. And absent objection from the board, I'd like to take an item out of order today. We do have guests from ETC. Chris Tatham and his team are here to present on the results of the community survey. So absent objection, we're going to welcome them at this time.
And is there a clicker, advancer? Chair, Commissioners, it's great to be back with you. I think I come here about once a year to share news. For those of you who aren't familiar with our firm, we're actually based here in Johnson County.
Mr. Tatham, we're getting a little bit of an audio issue here. I don't know if you might want
A
to try
little
speaking
closer?
a little closer.
A little higher? Is that better?
That'd be great. Thank you so much. I think Bill's going to help you out here.
There we go. How's that? Is that much better?
It's getting there. All right.
All right, I'll start over.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it's great to be back. I'm Chris Tatham, CEO of ETC Institute. We're based here in Johnson County, and we've been doing research for the county for over 40 years. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we've actually done more than 200 surveys for the county. We've surveyed over 100,000 residents for the county, plus over 300,000 residents for other communities during those many years. So our understanding of what's happening in the community is probably unparalleled, really, for any organization in the entire country. In fact, we just recently predicted the outcome of Olathe school bond issue within less than 1% of the vote 6 months before the vote. So I feel like when we share the results with you, this is what people think. It's not necessarily good or bad, but it's accurate. And we're here to equip you to understand what people are thinking, what those trends are, and help you interpret some of the findings. Today, I'm going to walk you through really what we did, give you a little overview of the purpose. I think most of you are familiar with that, but if you have questions, I'll certainly be happy to answer them. I'm then going to highlight 4 major findings along with some other things I think you may be interested in, but sometimes when I lay out 100 findings, it all gets lost together. So I picked the things that I think are perhaps most important to focus on today. The purpose of the survey was really established. The first time we did it this way was all the way back in 2005. The survey's been changed in variations over the years, but for the past 5-6 years, we've used a very similar set of questions. And it's really designed to get input from residents objectively. What does the average resident think about the quality of services, and what are their priorities for the county, so you can understand how those change and how well you're meeting them. And basically also give you a sense for how you're performing objectively compared to other communities, since one of the goals of our community is to be one of the highest performing organizations in the country. With regard to the methodology, we use the same methodology this year that we've used in previous years. It's designed to select a random sample of households in each of the 6 commission districts. Our goal is to get at least 200 per district, and this year we accomplished that, and we had 1,256 persons complete the survey. Results aren't perfect, but they are accurate within a margin of error of about plus or minus 3% at the 95% confidence level. And in layman's terms, that means if we did the survey 100 times, we'd probably get these same results within plus or minus 3% 95 times out of 100. So it's a very good sample, very accurate, and it's the standard that we use for most communities where we do similar surveys. And one of the ways we just check to make sure the survey from year to year is representative is we look at the demographics, how they compare to census, and also how they compare from one year to the next. So that way, if we suddenly have a big change in the sample composition, that could impact the results. For example, one year we had 50% females, next year we have 75% females. Well, that could change the results if there's differences in the way people respond based on gender. And you can see we have good distribution from all ages. You can see that the race and ethnicity of respondents is very similar to the census. Gender is pretty well split. And annual household income, when you look at the U.S. Census being 109,000, is right in line with the category that represents that on the survey. So all in all, I feel like you have great data, done this for you many years, and this year's sample is as accurate as any of the samples have been in the past. And this map just shows the location of respondents to the survey. These are geocoded at the block level, so we're not showing exact addresses. So this, you can't run out and find out how individuals responded, but it gives you a good idea that all areas are well represented. So with that, I think you can be confident in the results that I'm going to share with you today. So here's the 4 things. There's a lot of data in this report. We have a lot of information online, but here's the things I think to take away. And sometimes it's easy to forget these things, but first, Johnson County continues to rank as one of the best places to live, work, raise children in the country. That's not a surprise, but you continue to do that well and sustain some of the highest ratings in the country. Second, when it comes to priorities, health and human services, emergency and public safety services, and protecting open spaces, parks are among the most perceived important roles for the county. Third, although the ratings are a little bit lower in just one area, that's your public transit, the county's setting the standard for services in all core delivery areas. In fact, you have some extremely differences between your ratings and what the national averages are. And then the last one is to focus on the results here, but I had a new one that didn't apparently make this presentation, that the results this year are generally better. Last year, I came and brought some news that value for taxes had slid. It's actually up 5% this year. And your composite index, which assesses all the key indicators on the survey, increased from 101 to 103. It's kind of like a consumer price index. And so that means all in all, you're moving in the right direction, which is really great news. So let's start off and just kind of look at some of the findings. The first has to do with how the county rates as a place to live, work, and raise children. And you can see that these are the trends for several years dating back to really the pre-COVID. That's when we did your survey back in 2020, was right before COVID hit. And you can see generally the results are still very good for living and raising children, overall ratings for working, place to play, and a place to retire. No real significant differences from last year to this year in any of those categories. But when you look at how things compare nationally, the overall ratings for Johnson County as a place to live are nearly 40% above the national average. When it comes as a place to raise children, you can see also nearly 40% above the national average. As a place to work, it is 40% above the national average, and a place to retire. A lot of times people don't say, hey, I want to go retire someplace in Kansas. But compared to the national average, we're almost 20% above the nation in that regard, even though we do have winners and all that. So a lot of good things here just about our community and the perceptions of it. When it comes to the things that residents think are top priorities, one of the questions we ask them is what are the most critical roles? And things like health and human services, emergency and public safety services, and protecting open space and parks were at the top of the list. In fact, when you see that question, this is we've had for several years now, we've actually been tracking the relative importance of these roles. And you'll notice at the top, making sure necessary health and human services are available, that's increased significantly now for several years dating back to 2020. It was 42% back in 2020. It's now 56%, which is up 7% from a year ago. Maintaining high quality emergent services actually improved or increased its position from third place last year at 43% to second place this year at 45%. Public safety and law enforcement services is third at 41%. It was down slightly. And then you can see preserving open space and parks increased slightly 1%, but over the past few years, it's up 7%. So in other words, those are the things that if you ask the average resident on the street what's most important to them with regard to the roles the county should play, those will be at the top of the list. The next thing I'd like to share with you is just how you're setting the standard in so many areas. We have a couple sets of questions on the survey. One are what I consider kind of the strategic level questions. These are things like overall perceptions of value, customer service, what they think about the overall quality of services that you deliver. And you can see when it comes to the overall image of the county, it's 45% above the national average. Remember, the average is what most communities are shooting for. So for every community that we're presenting these results to, and they're a little above, there's other communities that are below. There are very few that are this much above the average anywhere. When you see the overall quality of your services you provided, that's 35% above the national average. In most communities, only 2 out of 5 residents are giving positive ratings. Here, it's more than 3 out of 4 at 78%. I also love the fact that your customer service, you can see, is almost 30% above the national average. It's almost twice what we see in most communities at 38%. So that means you've got great employees who are being responsive to resident needs. And perhaps most significantly, given that it dropped last year, is the overall value that people receive for their county taxes. That was actually increased 5% this year while the national average continued to drop. So something actually is happening definitely in the right direction here in Johnson County. In addition, when it comes to some of the specific services we assessed, you can see almost all of these services rank at or significantly above the national average. Public transit's the only area you can see that ranks below at 19% compared to 39%. But the park system, you can see, is over 40 points above the national average. Incredible. The average community is less than half of the people. Here it's 9 out of 10. Libraries at 86%. Emergency medical and ambulance services is 16% above the national average. And wastewater is really interesting. This is the entire county. but the survey we do of just wastewater customers for Johnson County wastewater, it's actually 90%. So, and the trend for this, if you actually have been doing the survey, like I think Commissioner Ashcraft for a long time, wastewater used to be below the national average. So that's a real significant finding. Public Works and Stormwater also round out the list for being above the national averages. With regard to trends, this year was a very positive year. Most items improved a little bit, but there weren't a lot of significant changes. The overall composite index, as I mentioned up front, went from 101 to 103. And that essentially, the base year is 100. So things are getting a little bit better. Last year, they declined a little bit, but you'll notice that one of the biggest improvements this year was value received for county taxes. That was up 5%. Sheriff's Office was up 6%. The district court's overall quality of services was up 2%. And I also want to highlight that overall perceptions of customer service increased by 2% as well. So we saw more things improve than decrease, but I also want to make sure you're aware of the things that went down. We had a handful of items, none of them dropped by more than 5%, but you can see the Johnson County Motor Vehicle Division was down 4%, communication outreach was down 3%, and you can see some of the other ones that decreased slightly. But all in all, it was a pretty consistent year that generally leaned in the positive direction. Next thing, as far as the priorities, one of the things that we do on the survey is we don't just ask residents about their overall satisfaction, we also ask them what's important to them. And so one of the things that you'll see on this matrix as you go from left to right is the relative importance of things. So things on the right are more important than the ones on the left. And as you go from the bottom to the top, the items on the top generally get better ratings. And what's interesting is if you look, there's going to be a handful of things near the axis. You can see that those are really statistically not significant. There's only one item here that's in the bottom right quadrant, which is really where we flag opportunities for improvement, and that's your Johnson County Aging and Human Services. So it's the one thing. And the other thing that stands out is if you actually draw a fit, kind of a best fit line for this, it actually goes from the bottom left to the top right. And that means you've got your resources pretty much aligned with what expectations for the services are. And what I mean by that is things that are less important to people get lower ratings. Things that are the most important to people get the best ratings. And that's ideally how you want to be. The only one that we identify as an area as a possible improvement is Johnson County Aging and Human Services. Now, this is for everybody here who's a right-brain person who likes pictures. Anybody who doesn't like this and likes a list. The left brain folks, this is the same information, just presented in a different way. And we take the results for the importance and satisfaction and then give you a ranking based on that. And you can see here, Johnson County Aging and Human Services is the only top tier 1 priority. And then you can see a number of other items are in the middle, but are more considered medium, and then lower priorities at the bottom. So if you want to improve overall satisfaction with county services, emphasizing improvements in the areas that have high ratings here are the items that will probably have the most impact on improving in satisfaction in the years ahead. Some of the other things that we asked folks in the survey is we asked them about their overall perceptions. Is their property being appraised fairly? You can see back, you'll see as a priority. So this isn't the satisfaction, this is how important this is as an issue. And you'll see that last year was 45%. It has dropped as a concern for residents. It's one of the reasons why I saw value for taxes improve. But that dropped 7%. It's still very high and a big concern, but not nearly as high as it was a year ago. In addition, perceptions of the county running well is the second highest, but people are generally a little less concerned with that this year. And if you look down the list, there's really not much that increased as far as the people selecting it as something that's really important. So many of these issues were more of a concern last year than they are this year. And that's consistent with the findings that the overall results are better. When people think things are better, they generally are less concerned about them. Some of the other things that we ask people are, we ask which 3 of these services should be protected first during tight budget conditions. And you can see overall public health was at the top of the list. It also had the top 3 percentage was the highest. It had the most people pick it as a first choice, followed by emergency disaster preparedness, mental health services, and aging services. But and aging services had the most, it had more people picking it as a first choice than mental health services did. Some of the other things that we found in the survey is just the percentage of people that think it's important for the county to have safety net services to low-income individuals and families. You can see here the overall percentage that picked it as very important or important was up 10% compared to last year and almost back to where it was in 2020 as we were entering the COVID era. In addition, we asked people what the top priority should be for the next 5 years. Keeping crime low, keeping the county safe is still at the top of the issue, but it's a little less important than it was last year. Public education was second. Healthcare access, you see, has continued to increase from 34% back in 2020. It's now 44% and a strong third priority. Well-maintained roads have actually decreased rather significantly, but are still the fourth highest priority, followed by parks and open trails and open space. So just to wrap things up, I know there's a lot in this report, and I'm certainly happy to answer other questions. But the bottom line, the county's definitely moving in the right direction. This year's results are up compared to last year, particularly in the area that was a major concern last year about value for taxes, setting the standard in pretty much every area of customer service and with regard to as a place to live. And moving forward, continuing to emphasize things with health and human services, your emergency services, public safety, and open space are things that I encourage you to do along with your aging services. And with that, Mr. Chair, I don't know if there's any questions, but I'd be happy to answer them.
Mr. Tatham, thank you so much for your work and your continued partnership with Johnson County. We could be all day here with questions about this. Statistics and data are fun to parse through and trying to find trends and to ask folks to pontificate about what they are. We could spend a lot of time. I'm going to be brief and just say thank you. I appreciate that this result from the survey is consistent from what we're hearing of the people of Johnson County, is that people are satisfied, people like living here. People think that the services that we provide are important and they appreciate the way in which they are provided. I'll ask you particularly about the area where we seem to be falling behind, and that's public transit. In your work, have you seen that continuously be low for Johnson County? And has the national trend always been kind of around that 39%? Or maybe you can just tell me a little bit more about your thoughts
It's
on
varied. We've been doing transit-related research. It's actually our largest division of our company, is doing transit research for pretty much every major transit agency in the country. And when it comes to Johnson County, we've been doing surveys since the late 90s on the issue, and it's gone up and down over time. So there have been times when there's been really strong priority and real strong interest, and then at other times it's faded. And so right now, I think you're seeing that there probably isn't going to be, you're not going to have 90% of the people start using transit every day, but I think right now the general attitude is to be that county people want to see the service. Even if they don't use it, there's something oftentimes people feel that it should be available for people. And so but that's expensive. And with the densities, I won't go into all that, but those are the reasons you all get elected to make those hard decisions. But there certainly is a desire for it. And that's one of the reasons I think when you see such a gap, in other words, the average is 38%, but you're in a county like Johnson County, it's 19% below the average. That suggests that there is at least a desire to do something more than currently exists.
No, and that was my thought to a T, is there's a desire for us to do more.
Yeah.
I hope that this summer and the programs that we are piloting for the World Cup give us an opportunity for folks to see and feel transit differently, and then be able to take the results from maybe a survey of users who take the opportunity to try public transit for some, maybe for the first time, to then have a conversation about how we leave a legacy from those programs and how it weaves into the strategic transit plan that we've been working on for the past 18 months. But thank you very much for your time and presentation. There's a couple of other folks that have questions. Appreciating everybody being measured with those questions. Again, could be here all day, but we'll start with Commissioner Brewer.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions for you. I believe this survey is sent out in February, correct?
Yeah, February or early March.
Okay. So is it fair to say, to some extent, the impressions or results are going to be reflective of whatever that experience might have been in 2025?
It probably is going to be what's leading up to even the timing of the survey. So in other words, things from 2025 would impact it, but even if there's major events or things that happen before the survey starts, they can impact it as well. So up until the day the person fills out the survey, it can be affected. So,
And the reason I asked the question is I was thinking about the transit. I know in the last 12 to 18 months, we've had a focus, intentional strategic planning, community conversations. And so I think we've dug into that more. And so I think this is reflective maybe of where we've been with transit, and hopefully we can do better once we, the changes are implemented on where we're going with transit. And then my only other question I have, for sake of time, is national trends. Are they going up or down?
It's mixed. So it's really, I'd say generally it's down a little bit, probably 1 to 2 points across the country compared to last year. But some communities are doing better, others are doing much worse. But on average, things have gone down a little bit. So the fact that you went up in a year when things went down generally is really a good thing.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Building on what Commissioner Brewer asked, and the chair is right, we could parse the data for quite some time, but I'd actually like to, at some point, get a little bit more information. You are kind enough to provide a composite index. I'd like to see that, and if you could include regional comparisons. I know there's lots of variation in the community, but we do measure ourselves against the well-being of our neighbors. So I'd be interested in seeing that. And kind of along the lines of what Commissioner Brewer was asking, in years past, you've done some comparisons not just longitudinal, which is very important, but to large communities and nationally on such things as the value for tax dollars and how well run. If we could get that information at some point, I would appreciate it.
Sure, and we have all that available, so we'll make sure you get it.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Allen Brand.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I just always appreciate you coming every year, just hearing, because this just really helps planning the future, and it's everything I thought it was going to be, but you never know. So I really appreciate all the work you and your team do, so thank you.
Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next year.
Well, thank you all.
Take care. All right, at this time, we are going to dive into the business session agenda. I note that there's a consent agenda. Commissioner Ashcraft has asked that we remove number 3 from the consent agenda. So at this time, I'll ask if there is a motion to adopt the consent agenda as amended. Commissioner Hanslick.
I move to adopt the consent agenda as amended.
Allen Brand, second.
So moved by Commissioner Hanslick and seconded by Commissioner Allen Brand. Will the clerk call the roll on the amended consent agenda?
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner Brewer.
Brewer, aye.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Brand.
Allen Brand, aye.
Chairman Kelly.
Aye, that is 7 in favor and none against. Is that consistent with your count?
It is.
Very good. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to item number 3. This is RFP 2025-040, considering authorizing contracts with Scram Systems and Shadow Track for electronic monitoring equipment and related services at a cost not to exceed $550,000 annually for a period of 1 year, 4 optional renewal periods. Rodney Weber from Corrections here. Mr. Weber, thank you very much. Commissioner Ashcraft, if you'd like to question Mr. Weber here on the item, I'll give you the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Weber, thank you. There are 6 items, I believe, in this packet, all related to monitoring and enforcement efforts. I wanted to ask you about items 5 and 6 real quickly. Item 5, I'm looking at the analysis sheet, and it indicates that you're recommending SCRAM. Is that the right pronunciation? SCRAM versus Firm B, although the price is a little bit lower or a little bit higher for SCRAM versus Firm B. The security, data protection, and risk management was a bit of an issue. Could you elaborate on what the thought process was selecting SCRAM versus Firm B?
Yeah, thank you for the question. When we went through this process, there were 6 of us that rated out each individual vendor. As far as the security and data protection, each vendor came with a level 1 or level 2 security certification. So we felt like the data and the security that they provide is pretty much around the same process of what they have. Scram currently is with us at this time as a vendor, so we were more familiar with that program, and we've had good security with Scram. As far as the remote breath alcohol monitoring unit, we love the product that they have for us. We feel that it's a very good product, above market of what is out there right now. So that was a deciding factor on why we went with Scram for that.
Very good. The next item is the ankle monitoring, and you've selected 2 firms. And the one firm is significantly more expensive than the other. What's the thought process for including Shadow Track in that selection process?
So through the RFP process, we wanted to ensure that we were getting the best products out there for one single item. Scram has what they call their secure cuff is in every band that they produce. So it's in their watches and all other stuff that they have. So we are already going to get the secure cuff with Scram. Shadow Track has a new system, a new innovative secure cup that is what we would utilize for more of a higher risk individual that maybe has tampered with some of our equipment before, or we feel is a flight risk and so on. It's also a cost savings at the end because it's something that we can detach from the office instead of having somebody cut it off at the jail or so on. So we can utilize that same cup again, which will be helpful. So with the difference in price, it's more an innovative, it's a newer cup. That's where we get the price difference.
So the Shadow Track is for higher risk
Yes.
situations. So,
Yeah.
so you'll use it selectively?
Yes,
Very good,
yes.
very good. So one last question, then, Mr. Weber, is this your first time before us?
It is, yes.
Well, good job, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Are there further questions or comments on this? The only comment I'll make is I appreciate this can be seen as a large expense, and it's not an insignificant amount of money. But as I maybe alluded to last week, I think this item is important. I think taking advantage of technology to allow folks the opportunity to, while being involved in the criminal justice system, still have an opportunity to go to work, still have an opportunity to parent kids or provide care to an elderly family member, to be able to go to church. At the same time, there's a cost savings to the county because the cost of these systems are less than incarceration. So I think it's an important endeavor that we are utilizing these technologies. Frankly, I'd like to see the opportunity to utilize them more as an alternative to incarceration where appropriate. So supportive of this, and thank you for your efforts, the efforts of the team of going through this process. Further comment, Commissioner Ashcraft?
I'm willing to make the motion when you're ready, Mr. Chair.
I appreciate that. Go ahead.
Very good. I move to authorize contracts with Scram Systems and Shadow Track for electronic monitoring services at a cost not to exceed $550,000 annually for a period of 1 year with an option to renew for 4 additional one-year periods per RFP 2025-040.
Hanslick, second.
So moved by Commissioner Ashcraft, seconded by Commissioner Hanslick. Not seeing further questions on this one, so I'd ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner Brewer.
Brewer, aye.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allen Brand.
Allen Brand, aye.
Ellie.
Aye. That is 7 in favor, none against. Is that consistent with your count?
It is.
Sir, thank you very much. Well done. We'll move on at this time to your regularly scheduled action agenda. We're going to start with resolution number WD 26009. We're going to have a public hearing and consider the authorization of additional funds for the construction phase of the Douglas L. Smith Middle Basin Wastewater Treatment Facility influent screening, disinfection, and plant effluent water improvement projects. The amount is $531,800. We'll consider authorizing a change order with Crossland Heavy Contractors. That amount is not to exceed $832,055. We'll also consider authorizing an engineering addendum with Carollo Engineers, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $190,598, as well as consider authorizing the wastewater general manager to execute the change order and engineering addendum, as well as authorizing future individual change orders less than or equal to $250,000, and the combined change order threshold requiring BOCC approval to 15% of the base contract amount. At this time, I'm going to open a public hearing on this topic. Welcome Susan Pekarik, Director of Johnson County Wastewater, to provide a presentation, and then we'll have an opportunity for the public hearing. So at this time, Ms. Pekarik, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Susan Pekarik with Wastewater. So construction of improvements at our Middle Basin facility is currently underway. We have a map up on the screen, and the areas of construction are highlighted for you. The construction project was authorized by the board in July of 2024. The improvements include replacement of the dry weather influence screening equipment, disinfection equipment, as well as the plant effluent water system. The influent pump station also has wet weather screening equipment. The equipment is a coarse bar screen that was installed in 1987. And while its age is beyond a typical normal useful life for this type of equipment, it is used intermittently, and it was expected that the equipment would last through this construction period. But unfortunately, it's failed, and it cannot be repaired. So the request before you today is for approving a change order and additional funding so that we can facilitate the replacement of this wet weather bar screen within the current construction project. This will be the quickest and most efficient way to get the new screen installed and ensure that we can protect downstream equipment during wet weather. The consulting engineer for the project developed a technical memorandum for the contractor so they could use that to develop a cost estimate for the work. The engineer found the estimate to be reasonable, and they do recommend accepting it for the change order. This request includes authorization of additional funding for the project. The original construction phase funding approval included $1.337 million in contingency for any unforeseen conditions within the project. A portion of that contingency, a $500,000 amount, is being used to offset the funding request. The additional funding request for this change is $531,800. Because purchasing policy states that the board must approve change orders that exceed $150,000, this request also includes approval of a change order to the construction contract in the amount of $832,055 and an addendum to the engineering construction phase contract of $190,598. This request also includes authorizing the wastewater general manager to execute those change orders. For this project only, we have also included authorization to the general manager to execute any future individual or combined change orders any individual change orders that are equal to or less than $250,000. In addition, the threshold in the purchasing policy, which states that change orders are allowed up to 10% of the base contract amount, we're requesting that that threshold be increased to 15% of the base contract amount. And the reason is because with the approval of the contract change order to the construction contract, as well as additional work change directives that have been identified to date with the project, will be at roughly 8.9%, about almost 9% of that base contract amount. So by increasing the threshold, that will allow us to continue to use the remaining contingency for any unforeseen conditions on the project. Funding for this project is funding for this project is through the Wastewater Capital Improvement Fund. It's been included in the capital finance charge model that we presented to the board last year and was approved as part of the fiscal year 2026 budget. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Pekarik, thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to ask you to step aside
Okay.
from the dais. This is a public hearing, so if anybody would like to comment regarding this item, the Douglas L. Smith Middle Basin Wastewater Treatment Facility Influent Screening, Disinfection, and Plant Effluent Water Improvement Project, you are welcome to do so at this time. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and then open up opportunities for discussion with the board. And just to keep things straightforward, I'd like to ask that we maybe take this in two steps. First, talk about this particular project and then your further request. So if that's okay, we'll start with Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you. Well, first of all, if I heard right, congratulations on 90% satisfaction for Johnson County wastewater.
Thank you.
I appreciate it every single day, so thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I grew up on a septic system, and let me tell you, I appreciate our wastewater. To this agenda item, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. What happened is in the course of this project, which has already been approved and vetted and all of those things, it was discovered that the wet weather IPS screen was not functioning. And so, as I understand, this is simply saying, let's fix it right now while we already have, we're in the process of this, because I assume it would cost more if we wait and have to do it as a separate project. Am I simplifying that too much, or is that?
That's exactly what we're
Okay.
requesting. Yep.
There's
Exactly
a lot of
what we're
words
asking.
there, and
Yeah.
but that's what I gleaned. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Pekarik, thank you for your summation of the funding. I was having trouble with the briefing sheet, trying to track the flow of funds. The contingency that we had originally established wasn't quite enough to cover this unforeseen expense. And as Commissioner Hanslick points out, it's appropriate to do it at this time. So I have no objections to that. I did want to ask you to elaborate a little bit on the 15% threshold that you're requesting for this project only. Is this something that you foresee needing to be addressed long-term for other projects, or is it just because of the funding mechanism at this particular project at this particular time?
We've included it just for this project at this time, and that's simply because, as I mentioned, we'll already be at that almost 9% level, and the 10% being the maximum. So if we wanted to utilize the remaining contingency, we would have to then stop the work and come back to the board for approval to use that, so.
And 15 is adequate?
Yes, remaining contingency will be below 15%, so yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And if we're ready to maybe talk about the whole motion a little bit. First of all, I just want to thank Ms. Pekarik and Mr. Norris and Ms. Trent for spending a little bit of time with me, Ms. Pekarik, especially since the original project was approved prior to the night when I was on board. So it's always great to get a good, sound foundation of the project. Secondly, to understand that today that wet weather screen is really to anticipate when we have a rain event that overwhelms the dry weather screen. We need to have that wet weather screen. And today, with that automation not working, you have to manually clear the debris off the screen. And we're anticipating wet weather coming up. It's April, so
Yes,
it's
we
not
are.
uncommon. So in the technical reading of the motion, I think everything was fine, but I was looking at this as a plain reading of the motion. And so I appreciate the time that I had with staff to just offer a little suggestion or update to the motion. I don't, and this is, to me, this is how we should work together. You guys are very focused on the technical aspect and what needs to be done and when it needs to be done, and to do it efficiently, effectively, and to be able to continue moving a project forward. Otherwise, what happens is if you have to come back too much to the board, you have stoppage issue, and stopping a project costs money, right? And impacts capacity. In an abundance from my policy hat wanting to be clear, I did have a slight amendment or suggestion to the suggested motion, just so that we understand that the authorization to the general manager to execute future individual change orders from 150 to 250, and the contingency from 10% to 15% is really for this specific project at this time. It doesn't mean that as a policy going forward, we should not contemplate that and have the conversation, but just to make it clear that it's for this project at this time, I would have a suggestion of, for the last portion of the suggested motion, that we just add the words "as related to this project" and then go on to authorize for the 250,000 and to going up to the 15%. I'm very supportive of the project. I'm very supportive of the necessity to make these changes for this specific project, and I'm very supportive of us having a policy discussion going forward on if these changes should be implemented in other projects for wastewater. And with that, when the time is right, I'm happy to make that motion. Thank you.
I don't think there's other requests for comment at this time, so if you want to go ahead and make the motion, we'll continue the discussion.
I appreciate that. I move to adopt resolution number WD 26-009 and authorize additional funds for consideration phase of the Douglas L. Smith Middle Basin Wastewater Treatment Facility Influent Screening, Disinfection, and Plant Effluent Water Improvement Project, IMB1-Contract 37, in an amount of $531,800. Authorize a change order with Crossland Heavy Contractors in the amount not to exceed $832,055. Authorize an engineering addendum with Carollo Engineers in an amount not to exceed $190,598. Authorize the general manager, wastewater general manager, to execute the change order and engineering addendum. And as related to this project, authorize the wastewater general manager to execute future individual change orders less than or equal to $250,000. And as related to this project, authorize the individual and combined change order threshold requiring BOCC approval to 15% of the base contract amount, and amend title of resolution number WD 26009 to reflect the same as presented.
Is there a second? Mr. Chairman,
I shall second, but I have a question.
Thank you. We'll come to you in a moment. So the motion's been made by Commissioner Brewer, seconded by Commissioner Ashcraft. I'd like to just ask legal counsel, given the amendment on the fly there, if legal counsel is comfortable with the motion as presented.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Commissioner Brewer did approach me prior to the meeting yesterday. We went through this and with staff. So we approved the amendment to the, and wrote some of it. Unfortunately, it's kind of wordy.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right, at this time, Commissioner Ashcraft, further questions and comments?
Mr. Chairman, that was exactly my question. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the motion and the intent behind the motion and the conversation and the request from staff here. I appreciate also purchasing policy 110-155. There's no red lines before us to discuss actually changing a purchasing policy. I think in these instances, though, when we recognize the changing needs and evolving needs of parts of our organization, the confidence and trust that we have in different parts of the organization to do fantastic work and to save cost by not requiring projects to halt, in providing authority for change orders to the departments as appropriate to allow projects to remain on time and not to continue to increase costs by taking projects out additional weeks or months for action items to get in front of the board, et cetera. And so in these instances, when we see a policy that may be one that is worthy of discussion and revision, I don't like to lose those opportunities. Clearly, right now is not the right time to have that conversation, but I just mentioned this as maybe a challenge, but also just a note for ourselves is making sure to circle back to these policies and not lose them in the many things that we have to do as commissioners so that we can continue to allow the organization to run as effectively and efficiently as possible. And so I will do my best to bring back policies like this as appropriate so that we can update our policies in a better sequence. So please look forward to that and continue to remind me about those opportunities. Commissioner Allen Brand?
Chair, I'm going to echo that because being in this business before, if you wait and go back through a whole cycle can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars more. When you have the project team in place and they continue to work, it's just going to keep the project moving. So, Chair, I support you in let's looking at some of these that we need to change. I've always been in support of that, and I think it's something that we need to do.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you. I just have a process question. So Commissioner Brewer has amended the original motion, and usually when that happens, we have to approve the amendment. So I'm a little confused on how the process, because this seems different than what we usually do.
Do you mind if I try?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So the motion that's in our briefing sheets is a suggested motion. The motion that we will consider is the motion that is made and put before the board by a commissioner. So while Commissioner Brewer has presented a motion that is different from the suggested motion in the briefing sheet, it is not an amendment to a pending motion. Therefore, we don't need to vote on the amendment of the motion because there's only one motion pending right now, and that's Commissioner Brewer's motion.
Okay.
Is that fair?
That is correct, and it happens frequently that we may have, you'll hear an item and want to do something differently, but it does say suggested.
So,
Thank you.
no problem. Any further questions on the motion from Commissioner Brewer? Commissioner Myers is debating whether or not to press the button, so we'll call on him.
Well, I was just gonna say, I have a little bit of the same concern, not that I have any problems with the motion, but I do like us following our amendment procedure instead of having to have a motion. And Commissioner Brewer did explain what she wanted to amend as a motion, but I think, again, for me, the process works better if we talk about the amendment, vote on it, and then make the motion as stated, but that's just me.
Back to Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you. No, that well stated, Commissioner Myers. I feel the same way, because my concern would be that any of us could just make a motion and change it up however we would like, rather than having the stated motion made and then discussing changes to that, especially when we've not had any discussion prior to that.
All right. If there's going to be questions, if all these questions are going to be about process, let's table those. Because I think we all have thoughts about process and parliamentary procedure and amendments to motions. And we can all agree to disagree on thoughts there about those. If there are questions about Commissioner Brewer's motion of the substance of the item related to Johnson County wastewater, let's continue to discuss those. We'll have an opportunity to discuss process at a future time.
This is Commissioner Fast.
Commissioner Fast?
Yeah, can you explain, I'm sorry, being virtual, explain exactly what Commissioner Brewer is changing from the suggested motion? That would be helpful for me.
Commissioner Burr, do you want to give it a shot? Would you like me to?
I'm happy to, Chair. Commissioner Fast, when you look at the suggested motion, and I will preface, I'm going to step away because that's process. When you look at the motion, go all the way down to when it gets to $190,598. And you get to authorizing that change order. And then the last two authorizations, the changing the limit from 150,000 to 250,000 and the threshold of contingency from 10% to 15%. The only thing I've changed is added the words "as related to this project." The reason I'm asking for that to be the motion is that in technical reading, I think this would hang together as originally printed, that it's relating to this specific project, but in plain reading, it could look as though we have taken a policy change that could go forward for other wastewater projects, that the policy would be now a $250,000 threshold for coming back to the board, and the policy could be a 15% contingency. And so in order just to keep this motion specific to this project, I requested that we just add the 6 words, "and as related to this project," just to have the plain reading be a little clearer. I do want to note again, I am not doing this because I'm not supportive of those policy changes. I just felt I didn't want plain reading to have anyone interpret that we went beyond this project with that specific type of policy change. I wanted that to be considered, as an evergreen policy for other things separately.
Further questions, Commissioner Fast? Are you good?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to clarify. Commissioner Brewer also added on that we are amending the resolution title to reflect the change that she is requesting as well. So just so to clarify that.
So, again, what we've done here is not changed any of the substance that wastewater is requesting. We are adding language to make it even more abundantly clear that this change applies only to this project. Right? Any other further questions or comments? Commissioner Allen-Brand?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to go ahead and support this, but I think it's overreach, to be honest. I am okay with the original motion, and I think it's very clear about what it's related to. So, but I'm not going to hold things up by not supporting it.
All right, with that, we will ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion pending.
Commissioner Fast?
Aye.
Commissioner Myers?
Myers, aye.
Commissioner Brewer?
Brewer, aye.
Commissioner Hanslick?
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen-Brand?
Allen-Brand, aye.
Chairman Kelly?
Aye, 7 votes in favor, none against. Is that consistent with your count?
It is.
Very good. We'll move on this time to item number 5. Thank you very much, Mr. Carrick. This is authorizing a final contract addendum with HDR Engineering for the Johnson County Wastewater Integrated Plan Program Services per RFP 2020-029. Tammy Lorenzen here to present the item. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Tammy Lorenzen with Wastewater. And I am here for the final time to request a contract addendum, the 5th and final, for the Integrated Plan Refinement and Delivery Support Contract. I always like to just start with a brief reminder that we selected integrated planning so that we could capitalize on the flexibilities that already exist within the Clean Water Act for the sequencing and scheduling of work, so that we could balance all of our needs and our priorities as a community when we develop this schedule, and not just regulatory priorities. I do also want to take a moment and just hit some of the highlights of things that we've accomplished under the program. Obviously, and we started in 2020, and we'll go through the end of this year and into next year, so there's a lot, but I did want to highlight, first starting with the KPI dashboard. We've had KPIs that we've been using to monitor the progress and efficiency of the collections O&M teams and the way that they do their work, but we did not have anything prior to this program that helped us monitor in a very clean and efficient way what we were doing with the facilities O&M teams. And so we developed, using industry standard metrics, dashboards and KPIs to track how the teams were doing preventative maintenance work, corrective maintenance work, other types of duties, things like that, and we created dashboards like this. And through the tracking of these, the superintendents at the facilities, they have monthly meetings with their staff. They go over not only what they're seeing on the dashboards, they're going over making sure that things are done consistently across not only just their assets, but all of the facilities, and suggestions for improvements. And we can see, this is just, I'm showing you the same metric, the same KPI for 4 consecutive months. And you can see that we started at 74%, and by the end, we're at 88%. So that's a 14% improvement in the way that we're completing this work. And so this is just one way that the program has been able to help us do our work better. I also wanted to highlight, just on a very high level, that we also started with a new way to leverage asset management data to help us better complete improvements on the facilities, the assets that we have. And so what we've been doing, we're using the condition assessment data. And through this flow chart, I'm not going to go through it item by item, but generally what it does is it helps us work through for each item based on the condition, what should the next action be? And this is, we have something similar on the collection side that helps us know the next action. We didn't have it here on the facility side, so this is another item that we've recently done, and we're moving forward to implementing it. Something else that we've really been focusing on in terms of the collections is how we can reduce the amount of infiltration and inflow that enters our system. This is rainwater that gets into our sanitary-only collection system that should not be there, and it takes up capacity during rain events. And it can cause capacity problems for us, where the pipe might normally be sized appropriately, but this rainwater could cause problems. 2 of the programs that we have, one, the JOCO inflow, and the other, the manhole INR reduction and renewal program. The JOCO inflow, the bar chart you see on the left-hand side, this is a program that we have implemented since we started the integrated plant program. And through this, it is a voluntary program with homeowners to go in. We have a group of plumbers that are under contract. We have pre-negotiated rates. They go in, if the homeowners approve to participate and they volunteer, those sources can be removed and the plumbers bill us directly. So the homeowners, we've made it very easy to try to remove any burdens from participation in the program. Just for these 4 areas that we've looked at so far, you can see that we either have met or exceeded the amount of INI reduction that we had as a goal. So this is really proving to be a very effective program. And then the manhole INI reduction program, that rehab program, we've been doing that since 2018. Just showing 13 of the areas that we've done, and in 11 of the 13, again, we have either met or exceeded the reduction, the amount of INI removed from the system. So that type of work, that targeted, cost-effective I&I removal is how, over time, from 1983 to now, we have been able to greatly reduce the number of wet weather overflows within our system from something that probably would make it would definitely be on your radars, to something that, we're less than maybe 1 per 100 miles of system, which is considered nationally to be like excellent. That is the top of where we could be. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight 2 opportunities of where we, through continuous improvement, have identified significant cost savings. The first is through the hydraulic modeling we've been doing of our collection system to evaluate, based on simulated storm events, what we think, where we're seeing that we need improvements, where we have capacity problems. We previously had a set of studies that were done using a very, the old method of hand developing, building these alternative scenarios, hand running them. You might get 10 scenarios that you would evaluate. Through this optimization software and the algorithm that's contained within, we can do tens of thousands of alternative scenarios. And through that, for our entire system, we have identified almost $280 million in cost savings compared to the previous plans that we have. So really using improvements in technology to help us do our work better. And finally, the Nelson funding. The Integrated Plan Program team also assisted us and led the effort to submit and provide all the information for us to acquire low-interest loans from EPA through their WIFIA program. That's the Water Infrastructure Financing and Improvement Act. That's a low-interest loan program. And then also through the state's SRF, State Revolving Fund Loan Program. Those combined, we estimate over the life of repayment of those loans, we will save $133 million compared to if we had just issued GEO bonds for that project. So those were just 2 wins I wanted to highlight. This is just a very high-level breakdown of what's included in the addendum, this last addendum. The main categories include program controls and management, project delivery support, asset management programs, and planning and regulatory. Just want to highlight 2 of those. The asset management programs, we're going to continue to do those KPI work. We're also looking at our low-pressure sewer system and how that renewal, when we have significant capital renewal with the low-pressure system, how we are going to manage that. We see that may be something coming up. And then also the basin capacity work that I was telling you about through the planning and regulatory. We're also going to be incorporating some of the capital projects that we have been doing that will be completed soon, the Mill Creek storage, and also the State Line Road Pump Station project, and incorporating those projects into the models to help us confirm that we're getting the results that we think we're going to get. So through this, basically a lot of very valuable work has been accomplished since 2020. When we first did this, this was a competitive procurement process that we went through strictly for this contract. So this is not a term and supply contract. And we are requesting the 5th and final addendum for $4,425,548. Funding for this project is included in the capital finance charge model. And I do show on here, just for your information, what the original contract amount was, the total of the previous 4 addendums, and then what the total will be at the end of this. Any questions?
Ms. Lorenzen, thank you very much for the now 5th addendum to this integrated plan. I think, again, like the survey, we could dive into the detail here because it is verbose for good reason. The preparation, the results that we've seen from Johnson County Wastewater are fantastic. And so to Commissioner Hanslick's earlier point, and congratulations to Ms. Pekarik, that goes to the entire team. Thank you so much for your diligence, and not only the effectiveness and the outcomes that we've seen, but the fiscal responsibility. We greatly appreciate it. Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad to make a motion on this item.
I will come back to you for the motion and give everybody a chance to comment if they should so choose. Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lorenzen, thank you for your presentation. I just would like to reinforce something you said, and being in the business, you see it and understand it. I'm reflecting, though, years ago, I lived in Chicago before they had many of the modern improvements that they've been working on for the last few decades. And when the inflow and infiltration overwhelms the system, it's, let me put it this way, a public health issue, to say the least, but it's also a huge financial impact trying to process that water. And Chicago has spent, the last report I saw was, I think it was several $100 million trying to address the issue. So I appreciate this work. It's on point, and I just would offer that some of our system is fairly old, and when it was built, they did not have the appreciation of inflow as we do today. So I know this is expensive, but your cost-benefit analysis is spot on, and I'm very supportive of this. And I do appreciate the clarification, because I was going to ask how we assure this was the best value, but your explanation yesterday of how HDR was selected satisfied my interest. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Hanslick, why don't we go to that motion, and we'll continue discussion if others have comments.
Thank you. I move that the board authorize a final contract addendum for $4,425,548 with HDR Engineering for Johnson County Wastewater Integrated Plan Program Services per RFP 2020-029.
Brewer, second.
So moved by Commissioner Hanslick, seconded by Commissioner Brewer. Is there further discussion, questions, comments at this time? Otherwise, I would like to thank our engineering partner on this. It's great that we have such fantastic engineers within the community that we can work with and to borrow that excellence and knowledge to provide our residents and users of Johnson County Wastewater an exceptional level of service. So thank you to HDR. With that, we'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion pending.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner Brewer.
Brewer, aye.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
Chairman Kelly.
Aye, that's 7 in favor and none against. Is that consistent with your count?
It is.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Lorenzen. We'll move on to item number 6. This is considering the contract renewal with TransDev, doing business as First Transit and WHC Worldwide LLC for transit services. Out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion and vote, and I'm going to invite our Vice Chair, Commissioner Hanslick, to handle the item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have Mr. Otto with us today to talk about this item, and if you might go ahead and give us more information.
Sure, happy to. Thank you. Aaron Otto with the County Manager's Office here to talk a little bit about this contract extension. So there's a couple of things that are important to know what is actually in front of you today. There's a lot of numbers to consider. The bigger overarching thing is that we're picking a vendor. We're picking also a not-to-exceed value. Nothing in here, and I want to make that crystal clear, obligates you to spend $1 with these groups going forward. So as you make budget decisions later this year, as you make budget decisions next year, those are what will drive the services we provide. So that's why it's important to see this as a not-to-exceed cap. And so there are two, just to walk back a little bit in terms of how we get to these kind of numbers. So number one, we're in a position where we have really, this originally was bid out by KCATA back when they were administering all of our services. And it allowed for a couple contract extensions. This is the last 2-year extension that may be possible. So we essentially have locked in the 2020 values with an up to 5% increase over those same services. Obviously, if you increase the scope, the cost goes up. But so what has been requested from the two is to execute a 5% increase between TransDev, which is the major provider of our fixed route service and part of our paratransit service, and then WHC, which provides some of our paratransit service and all of the microtransit service. That's the division of duties between the two contracts that are in front of you. So to put this in a little perspective, today, these agreements generally are a 50-50 cost share between federal $5307 and either ad valorem support, small amount of advertising or other supports, potentially state grants, and then fares. Now, fares have not been in place since April of 2020, and we're going to talk more about that in the future. So in the last few years, it's really been funded largely by ad valorem and grant support going in terms of providing these services. There are still fares, and there has been always on microtransit and Freedom on Demand, but everything else during that 6-year period has been free, but we'll get into that topic more later. So essentially, the reason this is in front of you today is that if you decide that you need more information or would rather go out to bid, we need a long runway to go out and try to make and put together this proposal for trying to make that transition sometime in 27. I'm not sure we could get it done by 27. I know that seems 7 months away, but this is a very large, complicated division of services that there's probably only 2 to 3 vendors nationwide that honestly could fulfill the scope of work that would be part of this. So as opposed to waiting till later in the year and bringing this in front of you, where really you'd have virtually no choice, because if you voted no, unless we did a brief extension they'd agreed to, we would not have service come January. So the reason it's in front of you now, I know it's pre-budget, is really to look at, are you comfortable going forward with this vendor? And I should mention, so the $45 million, that is a 2-year number. That also includes the next level of services we might provide under the strategic plan, much of which is not funded right now. I'll be very clear about that. But that $45 million includes potentially continue the airport route. It includes taking a route that we talked about in the strategic plan from Mission Transit Center to East Village to make a connection to the Kansas City, Missouri system. It talks about adding more service on Metcalf. It also includes the complementary paratransit that we have to have with Metcalf. There's also potential of an increase for upping the amount of capacity we have within the SWIFT program for JCDS. So there's a lot of numbers in there that are not funded. But again, this is a not to exceed cap of possible things that you may choose to do or some other source of dollars that comes forward in the next 2 years. So it just sets a ceiling for that. Probably best to try to answer questions you may have. Again, previously the board approved the last extension just under 2 years ago, which is the one we're currently living in. There's a breakdown on the back side that shows kind of the WHC value for both the microtransit and then the taxi service is really, taxi is a little bit misleading. That's part of our paratransit service. And then you can see the bulk of this is within the TransDev. TransDev funds basically the operators. And they also perform maintenance. They're the ones doing scheduling. So they are our staff. When you think of transit, Johnson County Transit literally has 6 county employees that run a $20 million plus operation. And so the only way that works is that obviously most of the work is contracted out. Fuel is separate. We own the assets. Generally, we own the assets for TransDev. We don't own the assets for WHC. So trying to give just a little flavor of what's included in this agreement. Probably best to see what questions you might have and take it from there.
Well, thank you, Mr. Otto. Appreciate that. We do have 2 people who have signed up to make comments on this. So if we might ask you to step aside, and we will start with Ben Hobart.
Ben Hobart, Westwood Hills. Chairman Kelly, or Vice Chair Hanslick, and Commissioners, it is apparent that Johnson County is captive to TransDev and its subsidiaries for transportation services. Johnson County has granted this contract for transportation services since 2013. With the proposed extension, JOCO will have let this contract for a full 15 years with apparently no meaningful competitive bidding process. Even more significantly, Johnson County has done nothing to break this contract up into manageable, discrete functions such that competitive bidding is a realistic possibility. It appears that on a dollar basis, almost the entirety of the transportation budget has been farmed out to TransDev with minimal or non-existent cost breakdown for specific functions. What is the additional cost of each of the scope of work functions cited in your briefing sheet? Metcalf, frequency, ADA, paratransit, new routes, airport. There's no breakdown, no transparency, no competitive bidding. The proposal presents a more than 40% increase in potential costs to taxpayers. The county should discern how these transportation services can be divided into reasonable, separate functions that can be competitively bid, thereby assuring that taxpayers have some assurance of getting fair value for their dollars. This accounting should happen currently. Mr. Otto indicated this is a not-to-exceed amount, but it seems to me there are so many moving parts that this board cannot make an informed decision as to whether or not this represents good value for taxpayers. Moreover, the specific RFP timing should be committed now, not an amorphous time period of some time between 2026 and 2028. Thank you for receiving my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Hobart. Next, we have Jeff Harkness.
Jeff Harkness, Kansas, Johnson County, Overland Park, and the Shawnee Mission area. 2028 will mark the 20th anniversary that the taxpayers voted to have the sales tax for JCERT. Education has proven to be oversold in our nation. Now we have $1.7 trillion in student loans. My thoughts are that we need to reevaluate these, us paying for the colleges and with their transporting stuff back and forth between us and Lawrence. I don't know universities and planning people don't consider transportation to be public transportation, so the local people get stuck with it. What I'd like to see us do is support the Sports Authority and get away from the Mid-American Regional Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harkness. That completes our public speakers, and so we're back to you, Mr. Otto.
Just a couple points that I appreciate the break to capture just a few more thoughts. One would be just to, I guess, to put, if you maintain today's services that's provided by these two vendors is roughly $16.6 million in expense, generally split 50-50 between federal grants and other sources of revenue. If you execute the 5% increase, it would be 17.7 next year, and a 5% increase the following year would be 18.5. So that's roughly a $1.9 million increase over the next 2 years at 5% increase for all the same level of service. The thing that's going to come back into play is that next week we're going to have a study session to talk about fares. At the moment, fares contribute virtually nothing. There's microtransit, which is something, and Freedom on Demand, but compared to fixed route and para overall, it's a very small amount. And we're anticipating $800,000 to $1 million per year coming in fares. That's where we left. And again, I don't want to get ahead of the cart here on the fares discussion, but largely the increases that are seen here are going to be paid for by $800,000 to $1 million of increase in fares, matched by $800,000 to $1 million of 5307 federal grants. That's how this is proposed to be funded for the next 2 years. Again, this predates my working with transit, and this was back when we were working with ATA, but ATA did do a competitive search in 2021. So we have used TransDev since 2013. It was called a different group back then called First Transit, but there was a competitive process done, again, a number of years ago, and there's two ways to look at that. Is that a stale number, or is that a locked-in number from that period of time that's been increased by up to 5% a year? We will bid this again. I have zero doubt that we would start very, very early in 28, so that if there is the desire for change, there is a decision by you in that way, and then there's time to make the massive shift of whatever that scope of work might include, so that it could be in effect by January of 29, because there has to be either rebid and pick the same vendor or pick a different vendor, but we need somebody January 1st, 2029 to pick up the pieces. I do expect there will be a decent bounce, regardless of who we pick, even if it's incumbent, that's going to reset after 8 years of being in that same kind of contract period back in 2029. So that's something to look forward to.
Well, thank you, Mr. Otto. So just so I understand, excuse me, you're saying that we can go through this process for another bid either now, or we will have to do it before 2029.
Yep, correct.
So so if we approve this motion today, does that preclude us from doing another bid at this time?
Well, the effective date of this is January 1st. So you would probably, I think it might be wise to, if it's your desire to have us go to bid, it would probably be wise to table this and ask us to go start working on that.
Okay, that's what I was trying to clarify.
We can cancel for convenience. I do want to note that. So it's not that there's a guaranteed you're locked for 2 years. If there's great reason or cause, there is provisions that would allow for a cancellation convenience. The reason that a lot of these services aren't provided organically to Johnson County driven by county staff for drivers is that there's times, and you've seen it with the previous director here speaking, where we've added or subtracted service. That all comes in the responsibility of TransDev, in this case for like fixed route service to provide, or WHC when we've changed the levels of how much support we put into microtransit, for example. So all that work when it comes to the labor and personnel falls on their shoulders in that sense. And I believe they provide similar work for ATA, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I appreciate that. We have some other questions. Commissioner Brewer.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Mr. Otto, first of all, thank you for your time this week to go into kind of the weeds on the contract and on the briefing sheet and your comments today that really clarifies that the action today is to really identify and accept the contract RFP response from the bidders, and that it does not obligate us at this point in time to any cost. As a matter of fact, the costs that are reflected in the briefing sheet are the maximum costs based not only on the bids, but based on the level of service that is informed if we were to turn on all elements of the newly passed strategic plan. So at this point, to stipulate any increase in costs would be premature because that will really be sorted out at the budget time.
Correct.
Am I correct?
Yep.
Thank you. I also appreciate that you are creating a long enough runway so that we are having a meaningful decision on contract today, as opposed to waiting a month or two before contract expiration, especially since vendors who have the capacity to provide this service in this sector are very limited. And finally, I appreciate and understand that this is really exercising the ability to extend a contract as originally contemplated, and that since the vast majority of the contract is really in personnel associated to driving the buses and associated to maintaining the buses, it would be somewhat unrealistic to think that we are going to change out personnel for these labor-intensive jobs every 2 or 3 years just for the sake of turning them out, changing that out. So with all of that, I appreciate the approach, I appreciate the contract, and I appreciate that we're going to have a much more in-depth conversation next week's study session about transit that will then inform budgeting decisions that we make. And with that, I support the motion as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Otto, if we were to table this until after the study session, would that cause you profound disruption?
Not necessarily. No, if we, because it's only 1 or 2 weeks away. The further you go into the year, the more likely it is that we would have to see if our current vendor would be willing to do an extension into 27 beyond the currently executed contract amendment, which goes through December 31st, 26. So it would just be compressing that time or then pushing up the likelihood we need to ask on that side. So
Well, I am interested in the RFP process, consideration, a serious review, and that's why I was asking. I would respectfully ask, Madam Chair, we table this for a couple of weeks until after the study session, so we can have a better understanding of what this involves and what the implications are.
So Commissioner Ashcraft, are you making a motion to table this?
Yes, I'll make a motion to table for 2 weeks.
To the next regular meeting? Because essentially, we'd have a discussion about fares next week and then potentially bring forward a proposal on the 26th or 23rd.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a?
Vice Chair, I stepped out of the room, so I wasn't in the room. Is there a motion on the floor right now?
There's not a motion
Okay.
on the floor yet. Do we need to get one on the floor before?
would.
We have a table. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll be happy to make the motion.
Commissioner Brewer, please go ahead.
Thank you. I move to authorize a 2-year contract renewal with TransDev, doing business as First Transit and WHC Worldwide LLC, WHCWW, formerly WHC SAF LLC, for transit services at a total cost not to exceed $45,520,007, with a contract term of January 1, 2027 to December 31, 2028, per request for proposal RFP F21-7024-30A.
Meyer, second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Ask the clerk to call the roll. Well, my understanding was we need to go ahead and take a vote on the,
Just the motion.
Just the motion.
okay, so he can go ahead and amend it with a motion to table.
Yeah, I'm not, Madam Chair.
Go right ahead.
I'm not questioning the motion. I'm questioning the timing of it and the implications that it has on services, and asking that it be postponed, tabled for 2 weeks until after the study session to get a better understanding of the implications and the impacts of this extension.
Okay, was that, the amendment
I'll
was
take
made?
a vote. Is
and
there
the
a second?
Was there a second on the table? The motion to table? Is there a second on the motion to table? Seeing none, we're going back to the original motion. Is there further discussion? Well, I was going to say, I appreciate, in fact, I had been thinking along those same lines about tabling. However, after talking to Mr. Otto, I better understand that this motion really, I don't think will be impacted by our discussion on fares, because at this time, I don't think we have time to undertake the kind of RFP I think that we want. And with the World Cup coming up and with the implementation of the new transit strategic plan, I don't think now's the time to look at making some major changes. And so I am comfortable supporting the motion as it is presented. Commissioner Ashcraft, you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand what you're suggesting. I would say, though, that in terms of timing and understanding, I would feel better to have a fuller briefing. Since we no longer do agenda review, I miss the benefit of having those kind of conversations. Consequently, my vote will reflect that concern.
Absolutely. Commissioner Brewer.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And Commissioner Ashcraft, I appreciate your concerns, and candidly, that is why, I know we're all getting accustomed to the new system, but the new system allows us a little bit longer runway to have those in-depth conversations. And frankly, here are the decisive factors for myself why I was comfortable, because I hear where you're coming from. It seemed a little out of step to have this as an action item and then the study session next week. But the bottom line on this is a couple things for me in the conversation that I had with Mr. Otto. And that is, we were clear in what the expectation of services should or needs to be based on the approved strategic plan, and if we were able to fully implement the strategic plan. The contract before us is with an existing vendor where we contemplated having another addendum to contract as long as they were meeting or exceeding expectations of current level of performance of the contract that they're under. They would not be considered if they weren't meeting that. Finally, this does not marry us to the cost. This is simply the cost projection if we were to do everything as contemplated. So we are still fully in the driver's seat each fiscal year to determine the amount of resources that we will invest in transit. And then those costs that are presented will be scaled to our decision on those costs, not on the contract itself. Please, Mr. Otto, if I'm incorrect in that, please correct me. So knowing that those are kind of the training wheels, to use a transportation metaphor, around this contract, I felt comfortable that this contract is really its own thing and would not be changed or informed differently by the transit conversation that we would have next week in our study session, that conversation would more inform the level of investment or the extent to which we exercise the contract when we come into our budget process. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I will ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Commissioner Hanslick, we're voting on Ashcraft's right now?
No, because there was no second to the amendment.
Okay, sorry.
This is on the actual motion as presented in the briefing sheet.
Okay, thank you.
Clerk, if you might go ahead.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner Brewer.
Brewer, aye.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
No.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And the chair has recused himself.
So we have 5 in favor, 1 against, and 1 recusal. So the motion is passed. Thank you, and I will turn this back over to Chair Kelly.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. We are going to take a 5-minute break at this time. It is 11:12. We'll be back around 11:17. Thank you all very much. We'll be in recess. For one more minute. Good afternoon, or good morning still. We are back on the record. At this time, we'll go to what is item number 7 on your agenda. This is a potential contract with Masters Transportation for the purchase of wheelchair accessible clean diesel transit buses and ancillary equipment with funds coming from federal and state grant funding and a county match from the transit operation funds, a total cost not to exceed $1,311,949. Mr. Otto here to present the item.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioners, Aaron Otto with the County Manager's Office. As the Chairman described the issue statement, just to give a little bit of background on it, what you see on the screen is one of the vehicles that we're talking about purchasing. Transit's trying an experiment to see if we can find some vehicles that are a little less expensive than some that have been previously used. And so we have intentions of buying 13 of these vehicles. We have 10 of them in the fleet today. These are the last 3 that would be coming on board. They're roughly being funded on an 85-15 split. There's a little bit difference just because of some of the ancillary equipment that doesn't qualify, but it's generally an 85-15 split, with the 15% being the county's portion. What we're looking at, quite honestly, and just as a preview, the transit fleet has aged a lot in the last few years. And what you see in the briefing sheet is a talk that the FTA's service life for vehicles like this is 12 years or 500,000 miles. More than half of our fleet is beyond its service life at this point when it comes to the fixed route service. So some of the buses that get the most miles, which is not hard to believe, are what are called the motor coach industry or MCI buses that are used on the K-10 connector. The original intent was to try to start cycling these into the K-10 connector to see if they could be an alternative to buying MCIs in the future, which are more expensive, but a bit more industrial. The buses that we're replacing right now would be ones that are averaging 11 years, or they've already reached 620,000 roughly miles on average. So they're beyond the service life on miles, and which again is not a surprise going from Johnson County Community College, Edwards campus over to the KU main campus. What might happen in the short run is we are using these buses also to help supplement the airport service that's going between Lenexa City Center, Overland Park Convention Center, and the obviously Kansas City International Airport. When we initially made this purchase, that wasn't something that we were contemplating because that's a newer service that was brought on board. But the goal ultimately, kind of more long-term, is these buses will be cycled in and tested as part of the K-10 route going forward. One thing that will need to happen as we get post-World Cup is a reevaluation of our capital needs on the fleet. It'd be nice to have some of these in service to see how they do and perform, to see if there's something to invest in the future. But I can see, not necessarily for this year's budget process, but for the following budget process, kind of an updated CIP effort when it comes to those capital acquisitions. Because quite frankly, the last couple of years, we've bought less vehicles and have been stretching out their service life. So that's why you see that over half the fleet is past its service life. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Otto. Questions, comments? We'll start with Commissioner Hanslick. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Hobart. We do have a registered public comment on this. If the clerk would let us know when we are ready to receive said public comment. All right, Mr. Hobart, please go ahead.
Ben Holbert, Westwood Hills. Chairman Kelly and Commissioners, I offer the following observations regarding the proposed 45-foot diesel bus purchases. 1, the briefing sheet gives no information regarding capacity utilization of these large buses. Is Johnson County wastefully driving buses on the K-10 route which are less than one-half full or even worse? Where is the data on whether it makes sense to replace 45-foot buses with new 45-foot buses rather than a smaller size geared to demand? Taxpayers deserve to know what is the capacity necessary on this route. 2, accordingly, please provide the data on capacity utilization of 45-foot buses to taxpayers. 3, The use of diesel buses as opposed to compressed natural gas buses is bad for our environment. These are fleet buses which return to a site nightly. So compressed natural gas is a much better alternative. A Clean Cities fact sheet indicates a 97% particulate matter reduction and a 58% reduction in oxides of nitrogen with buses running on CNG rather than diesel. 4, Kansas City Public Schools, North Kansas City Public Schools, and UPS in Kansas City have all made big strides to procuring compressed natural gas buses. Why is Johnson County so far behind the times? I provide an article about the North Kansas City short-term leases of 124 CNG buses, which keeps fixed costs down and are environmentally friendly. I would suggest that conversion to CNG will make sense in the long term. I recognize there are initial upfront supply costs that are also necessary, but diesel is much more volatile in costs, and CNG is a widely available propellant in the Midwest. So I would appreciate the board looking at that critically. Thank you for receiving my comments.
Sir, no public comments on this item. I see, so we'll invite that question.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Otto, for the presentation. A couple of questions. One, in regard to Mr. Hobart's comments, I appreciate that concern about the sustainability, but it's my understanding that the clean diesel is actually more efficient for longer haul duty buses because of the better fuel efficiency. So maybe you could speak to that, why, I don't even know if these buses are available in CNG. And then secondly, I wanted to emphasize how impressed I have always been with, I believe it's Transdev, maintains our buses. I've spent some time over there at the bus barn, I'll call it, and the professionalism and care that those technicians give to our buses is very impressive. They squeeze a lot of life out of buses. As you said, some of them are 625,000 miles when 500,000 is the suggested lifespan. So I think replacing the buses is important, and I do think your explanation of how these buses can be used to replace the even larger buses that are currently used for the K-10 route is a compelling argument also. So maybe you could can you talk a little bit about the fuel situation?
Happy to, and I think I can make this a two-parter. So there is a mix of CNG and clean natural gas, or clean diesel in the fleet today, and a lot of it has to go back to how the vehicle is used. And I believe you to be correct that because of the distance, and it's not a stop-go situation, that the clean diesel is as the appropriate use here, is my understanding. I'd be happy to follow up with the board to get a mix of what our current fleet inventory is on buses, to share that on a follow-up communication going forward. Something that, just to kind of put into play here a little bit, we're buying, I forgot to mention this earlier, we're buying off of what's called a TIPS cooperative agreement. This was solicited back in 2023, and one of the advantages to cooperative agreements is that it's opposed to us buying the 1Z, 2Z, 3Z buses at a time. It puts in for a large order, which usually gets you a volume discount. And what this one also did is essentially lock in a 2023 value. This is towards the end. They do have a chance for an extension, but this is towards the end of this purchasing agreement. But that's how we got to the values that you saw today. And purchasing is looked over to make sure it matches all of the different procedures required by the board and Johnson County solicitation process. Trying to remember what else in I would just say this is an innovative approach. This may work. This may prove not to work. So that's one of the reasons for taking a look at how these pan out. It's way too early to make that determination at this point, because the 10 that we already have, we've only had for a number of months, not a long enough period of time to discern their usability. And frankly, we haven't integrated them yet really into the route as much fully as we'd like to, because again, we're saving a lot of them for the airport route.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Otto, I thought you were going to go to this point. A previous board and with a previous director actually had quite extensive discussions about both the right sizing of buses and the fuel mixture in terms of CNG and diesel and what would work best given the configuration of the fleet and the service at any particular time. So I understand the argument, and I'm going to presume, but I hope you will confirm that the selection of both diesel and this size vehicle currently fits into what is embedded in the strategic plan and the thinking at this time. And I know it is changing, and Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned earlier, we hope to see improvements in the system, but this will offer us that flexibility, I'm assuming?
Correct. So if the airport route is continued to be used, its potential to be there. If it's the K-10 route, I failed to mention, the last time I looked at K-10 numbers, it's still, if not the highest, it's in the top 2 highest performing routes. It does have, it's a distance, to say the least, to go from the Edwards and Johnson County Community College campus to main campus, I think is 53 or 55 miles one way. So it does that, obviously rack up the miles very quickly on these vehicles. But last I looked, it's pushed over, I thought it was over 70,000 rides a year.
But that's why the diesel option is.
And that's partially right, because it only has essentially 4 stops in the whole circuit.
And I appreciate the clarification in terms of the value proposition and how these vehicles were selected. But help me understand, and forgive me if this is a silly question, what's the difference between clean diesel and dirty diesel, if there is such a thing? I mean, is it something in the fuel, or is it something in the vehicle that makes it cleaner? What does that mean?
I would need to research that further to give you an intelligent answer on that.
That's fine.
I think that is becoming the industry standard, but I can't speak to a measurement to quantify the difference between like a traditional Ruby Red 2.
It sounds better than dirty diesel, but I just, okay.
Understood.
Thank you. Commissioner Brewer.
I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Ashcraft, and I think it has something to do with the emissions levels is the difference. But once again, I appreciate your time this week to discuss these transit items and the conversation that we had on clean diesel versus CNG, because I am kind of a CNG fan. One of the questions I didn't ask, and I think it's a fair question, is I appreciated the cooperative purchasing platform that you use and how you explained how that allows us to really acquire equipment at the rates we are able to acquire the equipment. Fair question to ask, though, is do we compare that against over long-term lease costs? I mean, is there an advantage to owning over leasing? Is that an aspect of the research that gets done? And I apologize to spring that question on you. That's something I should have asked in our meeting, So
I want to talk to the transit staff a little bit more to look at when the last time some of that's been considered. The history of Johnson County Transit typically has been one of 2 equipment ownership models, either owning larger capital assets that you're going to run largely to well beyond their service life.
Right.
And then doing a fee for service that both includes the driver and the vehicle, which like we do at WHC for microtransit. We haven't had much of a history that I'm aware of, but for the very temporary use during World Cup of the 50 vehicles you authorized being used on the circulator link route. But that was for a very short duration period of time. That's the one piece of history I know of when there's been at least opportunity. We seem to usually be one in 2 camps, either bring the service and the driver and the vehicle, or just we have the capital asset.
I do appreciate a very important point that you made, and that is typically when you lease equipment, it's over a set term. And if you exceed that lease term, what those costs look like, or to renew the lease and change out equipment, those are very important cost considerations that you have to balance against owning. So I appreciate you.
And I missed a critical point. The acquisition of vehicles is typically supported at an 80 to 85% federal support versus 15, 20% by the local jurisdiction or other revenues. If they're done through a fee for service, since we're not buying the equipment, it's done at a 50-50 basis in terms of federal dollars to local dollars. So for like WHC, when they're having their smaller vehicles and vans to do microtransit, we're able to match only 50% of that cost, which is both personnel and their equipment. Versus the fixed route bus, we bought the bus at 80 to 85% federal funds, and then it's a 50-50 match on the driver in that kind of cost. So that's probably what's weighed into those considerations in the past pretty heavily.
Excellent point. Thank you.
Commissioner Myers. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Otto, for all your explanations and the discussion. I understand it all. I might have missed it though, but I thought one of the questions was, does this bus even come in CNG, with CNG?
I don't know the answer to that. I apologize. And I think I'm happy to find that out and follow up. But I do believe that because of the nature of how they are intended to be used, it's unlikely you're going to see them like on 87th Street, which has multiple stops within short distances. I think because of the nature of its use is probably why the default was to that position.
I'm just curious on whether they even came that way.
And I want to thank Robin Lyons, who was very helpful with this purchasing effort to try to take advantage of that group cooperative as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you. Just to answer a question that I often get when we are discussing buses, is why not EVs? And we've had that discussion many times, and I am very supportive of sustainability and energy efficiency. But at this time, I think the jury's out on whether electric buses are appropriate for our needs at this time. And until we have more data, we are being much more conservative in what we purchase until we know if that is a worthwhile investment. So
Roughly.
I just wanted to bring that up because I know I'll get asked that question.
I had that conversation with the previous director roughly a year ago when we were working on the budget that you considered for last year. There were essentially, at that time, there were two manufacturers of larger electric buses, one of which was definitely not there technology-wise. The other one was getting there, but also had a backlog of inventory orders because of people's desire to be as environmentally friendly as they can be. So that will probably change in the future, but it's very tip of the spear, it seems like at this point, from a production standpoint.
Thank you. I move to approve a contract with Masters Transportation for the purchase of 3 wheelchair-accessible 45-foot clean diesel transit buses, including the requisite ancillary equipment, with $1,107,839 from various federal and state grant funds and a county match of $204,110 from transit operating funds for a total cost not to exceed $1,311,949 per the Interlocal Purchasing System TIPS Contract 230204.
Allenbrand, second.
Moved by Commissioner Hanslick, seconded by Commissioner Allenbrand. Is there further discussion at this time? Seeing none, would the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner Brewer.
Brewer, aye.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
Chairman Kelly.
Aye, that's 7 in favor, none against. Is that consistent with your count?
It is.
Very good. We'll move on at this time to item number 8. Again, Arenado will be presenting it. This is considering an interlocal agreement with the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority for the purchase of a regional fare collection system and associated equipment, licenses, software, maintenance, and support to be used on Johnson County transit vehicles. Mr. Otto.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly. Aaron Otto with the County Manager's Office again. I want to recognize AJ Ferris, who's here from KCATA, who's really led a lot of this initiative, and we'll get to have more conversations with him as we talk about fairs in the future. And then Lisa Womack, who's the Mobility Coordinator, has also worked on this along with Justice Welker, our Interim Transit Director. So today, the action, just to be crystal clear, we're not setting rates, we're not talking about fair values. This is literally to provide the ability to purchase equipment that ATA is working on buying as a essentially for us, for Wyandotte County, and certainly for the services they provide in Kansas City, Missouri, so that we can have one fair system throughout the region. Despite having 3 major providers of transit services in the 2 states, we will all have the same system for the customer experience to be that much simpler. And so today's action, which is roughly an 80-20 split, 80% being federal dollars and 20% being local dollars for a total of like $25,000, $26,000, is that we're buying the validators and the operator control units. So it's just a little bit of a preview of what this means. When we'll talk about this a lot next week during the study session on the 16th. What we're moving towards is a cashless system. Cash both slows down the time to have to feed in old, money into the old machines. It also introduces a security risk because you have cash on a vehicle. And so what we're moving towards is one of about 3 different ways that you could ride the bus in terms of pay a fare going forward. One of which is literally just a tap with a credit card or a debit card. That will be your way and gain access through that validator on the bus. A second is to be via an app that will be available. And the third will be through essentially a fare card. And a fare card, which we'll talk about next week, is one that you can put money on and in the future be able to replenish that same card going forward. So there's different options for how people can pay their fare going forward. So this was solicited by KCATA. They did have 5 respondent groups. If you have questions about the solicitation, that's why AJ's here to help, because they ran this for the region. But the go forward here is to purchase the equipment, and this is for fixed route only. I should be very clear about this. And that's why it talks about the units for roughly 70 buses that this will be installed on. We'll have a phase 2 to talk about paratransit fares later this year. Happy to take any questions that you might have, or if I've messed anything up, happy to get corrected.
Thank you, sir. We're going to ask you to step aside and ask the clerk to prepare us to receive a public comment. Very good. Mr. Hobart.
Ben Holbert, Westwood Hills. Yesterday morning, I signed up to speak on these items. There was no reference or no briefing sheet on this item. Yesterday afternoon, I prepared my comments on these items. There was no briefing sheet on this item. This morning, just before I came out to drive out here, all of a sudden, there's a briefing sheet on this matter. So I don't know, and it's dated April 9th. Previously, the item said it was a cost of $127,800. Now it's $208,596. I think procedurally, this is really deficient to have a briefing sheet come up the morning, and I don't know what time it came up, the morning that it is considered. Other concerns are, what was the cost sharing between and among KCATA, Wyandotte County, and Johnson County? Three parties evidently using this system. Secondly, are we subsidizing our judgment, Johnson County judgment, to a committee? Because the committee is composed of KCATA, Johnson County, and the Unified Government of Wyandotte County. So are we in a minority so we can't adjust the system without the other 2 parties overriding us? I don't like regionalism. I think you have to have your own judgment made and then go to your committee with your decision. But the main item on here is I don't think it's procedurally appropriate to have a briefing sheet come out the morning that it's considered. Thank you much.
Thank you, sir. This time we'll invite back Mr. Otto for further discussion. And Mr. Otto, we're looking at just purchasing the fare collection system and equipment today. I appreciate that there's going to be an opportunity next week to discuss related items as it relates to how we choose to collect fares in Johnson County. how we choose the timing of this implementation. What is the means testing for those who would receive a reduced or a free fare? I mean, those are things that we still get the opportunity to discuss. I think the value in having the same equipment and the same procedures as transit agencies throughout our region is for customer and user experience. Because there are folks who would utilize multiple systems on a daily basis, having an opportunity to utilize not only the same system for their trip, whether it be a trip operated by Johnson County Transit or by KCATA, but to be able to utilize a collective procurement opportunity for value, I think is warranted. So in favor of this, I know we've had multiple discussions about collecting fares for our service. We're moving in that direction. Look forward to discussing it further. This is just the technical piece to be able to do that. Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank Mr. Otto and KCATA for the collaborative way in which this process has been taking place. I remember, I don't know, it's been 8 years ago, that there was a unilateral decision made by KCATA to go fare-free, and then that meant that all of the surrounding areas had to decide what they were going to do, and Johnson County made the decision to also go fare-free for the reasons the chairman stated, that so there's consistency across that. So I think this process, I'm impressed with it and pleased that there's a number of voices working together to put the fares back into place. Because, and I think Mr. Otto stated this before, we need the money to run our system. I think a fare-free system is very aspirational. I wish we could do it, and we tried, but I think we've found that at this point in time, we do need to return to those fares. So I'm glad to make the motion whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
I'll come back to you for that. Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hanslick, or Commissioner Hanslick, your summary in terms of the fares, I think, is a fair point. Sorry, double entendre. Yes, FAIR, and I'm supportive of that. Encourage that. There will be a need for a balance. Staff has demonstrated historically that they always try to find the best pricing point, and I expect them to continue. Did want to offer the observation from the speaker in terms of the procedures on the late changes on this briefing sheet. They were late. I had the benefit of visiting with Mr. Otto and had been told that changes were going to be forthcoming and was prepared for those changes, although the price point, not to exceed amount, was a little bit more than I was anticipating. And to that point, Mr. Otto, how do we ensure that Johnson County is getting a fair shake and the best price, best value for this service if it is controlled by those outside of Johnson County that may have a different cost consideration?
So I'm going to ask AJ to come up also, but I will speak to your first point about the changes that took place in the briefing sheet. There were principally three. One was there was more detail added about KCATA selection process. So just it amplified information that was there. Two, there was references to fares, and that was inappropriate from a standpoint of needing to bring that in a study session, so those were stricken out. Those were originally just there to reference as an example, but we didn't want people to think you were somehow approving a fares number through this action, so those were stricken. And then lastly, the value on the not to exceed changed because software maintenance and support along with licensing was decided should be added. That's why you hear all of that. It's equipment plus the things needed to make the equipment work. And that's why that value went up is my understanding. But as it relates to best value, I might let AJ talk a little bit about the process they went through and then fill in a few more pieces if necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Good afternoon. Almost. Morning, Commissioners. My name is AJ Ferris. I'm the Director of Planning and Scheduling at the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority, also serving as the project manager for the Fair Implementation Project. So I'll start off by saying that we went through an incredibly rigorous procurement and competitive bid process. As Mr. Otto noted, we did have several bids that came in, and after the competitive bid process and technical evaluation, Genfair was selected both for their technical ability to complete the project and provide a good product, but also that their price was the best out of all of them. So out of all those bidders, that is the best price and one of the best products out there. The other way of making sure that you all are getting the value is the numbers that you see in front of you today. For those 70-ish validators and operator control units, you're paying the same cost as we are for them. It's not a percentage of them or anything like that. You're paying the real cost that was locked into our contract with Genfair for the validator, which is the same cost the KCATA is paying for that technical hardware and the same cost that the Unified Government of Wyandotte County and Kansas City, Kansas is paying.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Question, though, was anyone from Johnson County Transit Authority at the table when that process was going on in terms of the selection process?
Yes, there were. So throughout this entire process, we had been working with Josh Powers at the time. And then Lisa and Justice and Aaron have been very involved, as well as our board, the KCATA Board Commissioner, Julie Lorenz as well.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have an incidental question, but I will defer.
Thank you. Commissioner Allen Brand.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say I appreciate the partnerships, because with partnerships, you actually get better pricing and you're stronger as a louder voice when there's more partners involved. So I really do appreciate that. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Commissioner Burr.
Yes, I'm going to just do a couple housekeeping clarifications. One, our briefing sheets, the date of our briefing sheets by custom is the date of the meeting. So they're not the date of release, but they're date of the meeting. Two, because I've been having a technical issue with my device that is allowing me to go paperless. I am now taking shots when I make notes on briefing sheets. I was informed on Wednesday that this briefing sheet would be updated. I had about 5 minutes notice, and I took the screenshot on 10:41 a.m. of the previous briefing sheet that was online, and the notes I made were on that sheet I made on Tuesday. And just so public knows, since I'm a publicly elected official, and once you give me information, it's public information, official meeting information, I get information when the public gets their information. So I just know from pulling up my screenshot with the notes on the document that I would have had access to the document at a minimum by Tuesday, and then that document was updated and modified, like I said, sometime Wednesday morning, because my step person I'm working with on this technical issue is letting me know, so I know if I take any notes to do a screenshot, because I'm losing them when a new document upload has to happen. So just a little fun world of housekeeping on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Ashcraft, you had an incidental question?
I did, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize. It was related to the payment options that Mr. Otto covered. And I understand those options, but it used to be, and I haven't checked recently, on the dollar bill under legal tender, it says good for all public and private debt. So does that mean if I show up at the bus with money in hand, you're not going to accept it and not allow me on the bus? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so a cashless system really isn't the right way to say it. It's cashless on board. There will be options for people to still convert their physical currency to digital value, either through the reloadable smart card, the mobile application, or through those two ways. So you're correct, on board, that cash will not be accepted, but we would basically allow them to go to different places, either retail networks or administrative point of sale systems at municipal buildings, or retail point of sale systems as well, to digitize that cash.
Well, there's a portion of the population that transit serves that may not have ready access to technology.
Correct.
Or so any allowances?
Yeah, so this is something that, as Mr. Otto stated, we will be getting into in very big detail, or very clear detail next week.
Okay.
But we will be talking about all the ways to make sure that we're bridging that equity gap for not only people that don't have access to a smartphone, but also to make sure that that gap is bridged for unbanked individuals as well that rely on cash.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hanslick, how about the motion?
Thank you. I move to approve authorizing an interlocal agreement with the Kansas City Area Transit Authority for the purchase of a regional fare collection system, associated equipment, licenses, software, maintenance, and support to be used on Johnson County transit vehicles in an amount not to exceed $208,596.25.
Allenbrand, second.
So moved by Commissioner Hanslick, seconded by Commissioner Allenbrand. Further questions or comments at this time? Seeing none, would the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Fast.
In the summer,
Aye.
something in the fall, and if we did a virtual.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner Brewer.
Brewer, aye.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
Chairman Kelly.
Aye, that's 7 in favor, none against. Is that consistent with your count?
It is.
Very good, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Otto. We'll move on at this time to a county manager's report from Ms. Postoke Ferguson.
Chairman and Commissioners, good morning for a few more minutes. I have two items for you today. First, we want to highlight to you a pilot program between Johnson County Library and Johnson County Parks and Recreation to provide free museum passes to our patrons. And here today to provide an overview of the pilot is Mary McMurray, Director of the Johnson County Museum. Mary, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to get to share some exciting news with you all about a new initiative we'll be launching next month. It's a Museum Pass program that will allow Johnson County library cardholders to obtain passes at library locations throughout the county. This initiative was recently approved by the JCPRD board and will launch in its pilot phase next month. The Museum Pass initiative reflects the strength of partnership between JCPRD and the Johnson County Library, and we truly appreciate their collaboration in serving our community. I'd like to recognize one of our library partners who's with us today, Kinsley Riggs, Deputy Director of the Johnson County Library, and thank her for her partnership and work. Together, we will launch this pilot phase of the Museum Pass next month, and through this partnership, we'll offer 5 museum passes per week at the library's 14 branches for a total of 70 passes to be distributed each week, or 3,640 a year. These passes are single use and will be collected and tracked by the museum staff at the Johnson County Arts and Heritage Center. The goal of this is simple: to make it easier for our residents to access the museum through a trusted, familiar community resource. This work directly supports the Johnson County Museum strategic plan in 2 key ways. First, it reduces financial barriers to participation, ensuring that more residents can engage with our county's rich history. And second, it strengthens strategic partnerships with other county departments and agencies, allowing us to deliver public services more effectively and collaboratively. At its core, this initiative is about access and public value. By connecting the library and the museum, we are expanding opportunities for residents to experience local history, lifelong learning, and community connection. This pilot is intentionally modest in scale and designed to be evaluated. Because the museum is already open and staffed, there are no new operating costs associated with this program. We will, however, monitor its impacts on admission, memberships, overall enterprise operations, and staff capacity. We'll also look closely at usage and visitation patterns. I do want to note that experience across the museum field shows that programs like this often increase overall engagement by reaching new audiences, many of whom return to deepen their connections with us over time. The program will launch alongside our World Cup community engagement efforts and continue into 2027 as the museum prepares for planned museum admission fee increases. Staff will monitor this participation and assess our long-term sustainability, including potential sponsorship opportunities. We'll use this data to inform next steps in what we see as a promising partnership. Ultimately, this initiative reflects our commitment to being accessible, collaborative, and responsive to the community we serve. We are excited to get started.
Well, Ms. McMurray, we're excited as well. I think there's so much value in sharing these museums with everybody in our community, and making sure that everybody has access to those opportunities is great. The caliber of the museum is fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity to be there at the opening of the exhibit featuring democracy. I think there's a lot of great things, and if commissioners haven't had the opportunity to visit it yet, there's a lot of history related specifically to the commission as well, which is enlightening. So I'd encourage everybody to take this opportunity, and making this an opportunity that everyone in our community can share is just such a great initiative. Thank you to the library as well for their partnership on this.
Mary and Kinsley, thank you for being here today.
Oh, Commissioner Hanslick would like to say something.
Thank you. I appreciate the information. Just two questions. One is, I'd be interested in knowing how this opportunity is going to be communicated and marketed to people. I'm thinking like through our Aging and Human Services programs, to especially reach people who might not otherwise have considered going to the museum because of the cost. And secondly, since we've been talking about transit, I was just thinking if there might be a way to include something with the pass that has how to get there, in terms of from that library, how would you get to the museum? Is there transit available, microtransit, for people who may not have a car to be able to get there? So that's just a couple of thoughts I had.
Well, I thank you for sharing those, and we are still developing the design of the passes and distribution, but the library is great at helping people access knowledge, so I'm sure I see Kinsley writing down right over there. And sharing it out with other county departments whose populations could be served by this program is certainly in alignment as well with our wanting to amplify through existing agencies and departments.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the example of good partnership across departments. Thank you. The last item is a notice of public hearing. We were notified that the City of Shawnee will conduct a public hearing on Monday, May 11th at 2026 at 6 p.m. to consider the establishment of a TIF redevelopment district. The proposed district is generally located near the intersection of Interstate 435 and Midland Drive. The redevelopment district consists of design, development, and construction of various mixed-use improvements within seven redevelopment project areas. A copy of the materials are attached in your packet. And Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Ashcraft has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been a while since we've had a new TIF presented to us. Most of them have been expansions. And as I understand it, this is our one shot to ask questions. Will the cost-benefit analysis be presented to us before the TIF comment deadline is imposed?
Staff has inquired, and they will not have the cost benefit until the project plans comes forward. So no, it won't be within that 30 days.
Well, that's pretty much the course, so I understand that. Mr. Chairman, I find that objectionable and would suggest we remand that until we have a cost-benefit analysis and know what the impact's going to be on Johnson County, so we can make an informed decision as to whether or not to validate this.
I very much appreciate your objection. Commissioner Brewer.
On this, I do agree with Commissioner Ashcraft. If there's a system in place where, and once again, it is not in any way, shape, or form a reflection on this particular proposal, it's more of a reflection on the process. And I know the process, I believe, and I'll look to legal, is something that's in statute. So it's really a statutory issue that if it's not a reasonable time between a public hearing and other taxing districts to indicate whether or not there's a concern on impact to those taxing districts, if 30 days is not a reasonable amount of time, it really does not put us in the position to really hold up our fiduciary responsibility in deliberating and determining if we have a concern or not. Once again, it's not a reflection on the project. It's not a reflection on the jurisdiction that's entertaining the project. It's really a reflection on the statute itself and whether or not the statute is reasonable and realistic based on how these projects come about and the different phasing of it to allow us taxing jurisdictions. And we're not the only taxing jurisdiction that has that 30-day window to weigh in. So I just want to make those comments for the record.
Thank you very much. All right, at this time, there is not a legislative report today, and we've already had a report from the community survey. Therefore, we will move to commissioner comments. Commissioner Fast, would you like a commissioner comment today?
No, thank you.
All right, then we'll move to Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of these items took place a while ago, but I think important to just mention. I attended a Community Connect JOCO that was sponsored by United Community Services, an ability to network and hear needs of organizations regionally, not just Johnson County, but across the region. Very good experience and a very good turnout. I also attended the JCPRD Committee of the Whole this week. Also with JCPRD, we had a board retreat, an all-day board retreat. And one of the things that we did at this retreat was we were able to tour the Army ammunition plant properties that JCPRD either already has or is trying to acquire, and it was an excellent tour and something that I wish and would hope that even members of this board would be able to take and see some of the property itself and also the unbelievable potential that's going to be able to be realized by Johnson County Parks and Recreation in the future.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Brewer.
Thank you. Just a couple updates, one of which is want to recognize that there's an initiative of which Johnson County is part of. It's the Welcoming JOCO Immigrant Inclusion Roadmap project that we're partnering, I believe, with United Community Services, I think Reach Health Foundation, and Johnson County as well as other partners that I may have left off. And they were recruiting for subcommittee co-chairs, and I will be co-chairing the Government and Community Leadership Subcommittee, so I'm happy to get involved and excited to see that work get underway. And want to reflect on a recent veto by the governor on House Bill 2745, which would have imposed some pretty unrealistic limits on how local taxing authorities are able to function fiscally. I applaud state and local levels to be mindful of impact of cost on our taxpayers, but this particular bill would have created and had already created, as was reported in the news this week, a number of local communities throughout the state who had voter-approved bond issues got notified by the institutions they were working with to come up with those to sell those bonds, that they had to discontinue or stop that process at a detriment to the projects that are trying to get done with the concern of the impact of 2745. So I appreciate that we are looking at the real impacts of state legislation on the ability of effective financial management at the local level. And then I applaud the work that Overland Park is doing as they're trying to address attainable housing within their city with some new initiatives, one that was discussed this week. And finally, it's my husband and I's 32nd wedding anniversary today. So I'm glad to be spending that wedding anniversary, I guess, with all of you. But it makes me reflective, after 3+ decades of marriage, and anyone who's been married for maybe a few decades may recognize this. When we think about a lifetime with someone, there are seasons to that lifetime. Sometimes those seasons are warm and fluffy, and sometimes those seasons are a little bit harder and colder. So I just want to thank my husband for being my life partner for all those seasons of life, and that's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Brewer, I wanted just to piggyback on your statement about TIFs. I too have no particular objections about this project. My concern is I have no knowledge about it, and it's really hard to make any kind of determination. And it reminds me of the phrase, if you're not at the table, you're on the table. And the many communities could invite Johnson County in, or we could ask to be invited in, not to dissuade or mingle, but to try to get a better understanding and prepare for the potential impact on housing or transit or public safety, which could have and has had in other circumstances impacts on our operations and our budgets. So, Mr. Chairman, that's why I object. I find the process flawed, and I think we should have a greater leadership role in that those developments as they come forward, so we can better prepare and understand it, and maybe make some suggestions along the way. So that concludes my comment, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Chair, I spoke last week, so I'm good.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you. Yes, at yesterday's Commission on Aging meeting, we had a very robust discussion around the state legislature's efforts to reform property taxes and how that threatens county services. So I appreciate Commissioner Brewer mentioning 2745. However, we know the legislature is currently in their veto session, and it ain't over till it's over. So we don't want to count our chickens before they hatch. So I am very concerned, and I know the members of the Commission on Aging were very concerned and had a lot of questions. Actually, I was just reading in our National Association of County newspaper, a whole article that numerous states are taking similar action to the Kansas state legislature. And the reason it's frustrating is because a lot of these decisions are being made without input from counties and without consideration for the potential impact on counties. It saddens me that we can't but work together and say that we have the mutual interest in providing quality services and keeping property taxes reasonable and where they need to be and where they should be. So I hope that there's opportunities maybe in the off legislative session season that we can have those discussions to find out what is a realistic approach. And I think there are a lot of them. It might require changing some of the ways that we do things in the system. But I think doing things that just create sound bites isn't in the best interest of our residents. So I look forward to having those conversations with our legislators to help educate them about how we budget and how we work at the county level and how they can be supportive of those efforts. Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. A lot of great things got done today, particularly in the areas of wastewater and transit, so I appreciate everybody's efforts there. I know sometimes it can take a while to get into the weeds on these items, so thank you all very much for your patience and your cooperation. Lots of good things have happened in the last few weeks. Lots of good things will happen in the next few. I will mention, I look forward to speaking with Johnson County on Tuesday. The state of the county, I'm required to do so by the charter preview. The state of Johnson County is good, it's strong. And the survey results that we received today surely indicate that. So I look forward to welcoming hundreds of folks to the Olathe Convention Center, and hopefully several hundred more watching online. And thank you very much to the team in the Department of Communications, as well as the County Manager's Office, for assisting us in putting this together. We look forward to seeing you there next Tuesday. Until then, we have been through all of the items that are on our action agenda. And absent objection from anybody, we are adjourned. Everybody have a safe evening and a good week. Thank you.